there are 4 ingredients for life. And he told me what those are. And then she says, love, be loved, just be, and experience life.
Is death merely a gateway to a new beginning? What awaits us on the other side? Welcome to episode 2 of the Spiritual Code Podcast. My name is Ben Choi, and I'll be your guide as we continue our journey of spiritual growth and self-discovery. In today's episode, we'll be chatting with a researcher in the field of near-death experiences. He spent decades interviewing hundreds of people that have shared their profound experiences. What he's discovered may shift your view on reality. Now let's connect with Bob Kopis.
Hi, I'm Bob Koppers. I'm living in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. You can see Amsterdam behind me. There's a skinny bridge here, and this is the street that I live in. And I was in finance before. That's where my career was. I was studying economics, and I was in central banking in a commercial bank. But spirituality, and especially in near-death experiences, were a topic that I always kept in mind. So I researched them, and that got out of hand. So I wrote a book first about near-death experiences and compare them with what several religions say, so the 5 main religions. And then I became member of the board of directors. Actually, first, I wrote this other book with quotes, hundreds of quotes from more than 100 NDEers. And I did that together with people from the board of directors of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANDS. And they liked it so much, so they asked me to become board member of the organization. And I was so fortunate to be asked, and that's what I became. And to show you the book, it's impressions of near-death experiences, quotations from more than 100 NDEers. And there are hundreds of quotes because I wanted to show what people said who had these experiences. I wanted to hear what they have to say, and not the part where they say they went into a car crash or in an operating situation in a hospital. I wanted to hear about the messages that they got from the other side, or how it is on the other side of, or other pieces of information that I wanted to know about the other side, because the other side is what interested me, not how they die here. That's sometimes it's okay to hear, of course, but it's not what it's all about. The most important thing is the messages from the other side. And that's where I am now.
What is a near-death experience?
Well, the problem with near-death experiences, NDEs, is that there is not one NDE the same as another. But in any case, they are all very life-changing events. They are very extraordinary for the people who have had those experiences, because what they say, they have been in this otherworldly environment that is totally different from the world that we are in here. And they say also that the other side, so where they have been, this otherworldly environment, is more real than the environment on Earth that we live in. And you cannot say that there's a typical way of having an experience. As I said, they are all different. But sometimes people travel through a tunnel, and then in a speed as high as the speed of light, they find on the other side of the tunnel, they find abundance of love, unconditional love. I have to say also that some people go cross a river, or they go through a cave, or there's some other means. Sometimes people just go into the otherworldly environment without having had a tunnel or cave or a river to cross. But they see this light. Light is seen often. Some other aspects of NDEs is that people see deceased relatives. Life reviews are very important. A life review is a review of your life, which you will see from not only your own point of view, but from the point of view of the other persons that you interacted with as well. So you become the other person. That's really very interesting to talk about. And the feeling of love is very big on the other side, is very predominant. And the other thing that people say and that I find very important is that they feel very much interconnected with everyone, with everything. So not only human beings, but also animals, the nature, and anything. And that goes so far that some people even say that we are part of one, so that we are actually one big whole that we are part of, or one big energy, or that we are even God. I just quote people. That's what I hear.
Igniting a near-death experience.
Well, the thing is that NDEs occur in very different circumstances. So, like the most common circumstance in which NDEs occur is in a life-threatening situation, in a medical critical situation. Like that could be in a hospital during surgery, or a cardiac arrest, or an accident. But that's not only in those cases that it happens. We know that near-death experiences occur in different circumstances. So another circumstance in which that is reported very often is when people have a psychological crisis. And other situations are, for instance, when people meditate or pray, and sometimes also just without any reason. Those are very interesting, but they don't occur that often. So the most often they occur in circumstances where there is a medical critical situation, and then psychological crises, and then prayer and meditation. And only rarely do we hear about people having it spontaneously. It is all about what the experience is. There is a scale that you can access on our website. For instance, it's a scientific scale, the Grayson scale. You can answer a number of questions, and then when you have a certain amount of points, then you have an NDE. So it's sort of scientifically based, how to determine if someone had an NDE. But if you have had such an ND, if you score enough on that scale, it's still not sure under which circumstances that you have it under is those that you had that I mentioned. But you cannot say like you always have it in this kind of circumstance. Like for instance, when you have a cardiac arrest or so, something like only 20% of the people have then an NDE. So we don't know why the other 80 don't have that. That's still a mystery.
The NDE files.
There are several that come to my mind, but one was when I spoke with a Dutch woman. That was years ago. And that really set my mind on life reviews. I think that was the first time that I heard about life reviews. She said, and you have to understand, she was an elderly lady at that time, and she was in the war, the Second World War, at the end of it, as a little child. So after the war, she was living in the Netherlands in a war-torn country, and we didn't have, there was a lack of everything, food, and especially luxury things like sweets or so. Well, at one point, her mother gave her some sweets to share with school friends. And in her life review, so later on in her life, she had this medical critical situation. She had her near-death experience. And in her near-death experience, she had her life review. And in the life review, she saw that particular moment where she shared the sweets with friends in school as a child of, I don't know, 8 or 7 or so. And she noticed the feelings of the children that she shared the sweets with. And she was those children. And she said, I could really feel their feelings as if I were them. And I noticed how they loved it that I shared that with them, because they had the feeling that they were so worthy of something that was so scarce at that moment in time in the Netherlands. And it didn't stay with the children. The feeling went on. It was like a ripple effect that went also to the mother of one of the children that she shared the sweets with. And she felt that even though she didn't know the mother, she never seen the mother, but she saw and felt how it was important for her as well. And it went further than that. And the same woman also told me this story where another schoolgirl had lice in her hair. It's kind of itchy. It's not very nice to have. And we didn't have shampoos at the time, so we had to do it manually. And this school friend then asked the NDER, can you help me? And she made a big fuss out of it. So in her life review, she saw that episode, and she saw how she was actually mean to the school friend with the lice. And she felt how that felt for the school friend. And she felt as if a knife was stuck in her heart. She felt the pain on behalf of the school friend, and she was really, really sad. And I noticed one of the things she mentioned is that the pain of the school friend and the fact that she did something like that was so horrible that she felt horrible about. That was not the worst thing. But she said the fact that I had options that I could choose from, and I saw different options that would have given more love to the world, and that I missed. I just missed to choose one of those wonderful options. So to choose for asking her to sit aside there somewhere and without big fuss do this kind of thing. So all the other school friends didn't know that she had lice. And she said, I miss that. That felt more horrible than the pain of the child. That is one of those. So I loved, because it showed you that you can feel what you do to others as if you are the other. And that whatever you do, it has a ripple effect. It goes elsewhere. It goes to more places than only where you are. And the other is a little girl of 8, again, a little girl, but this was in the US. She was abducted by 2 men. That was horrible. They tried to drown her, as she distinctly remember that she looked from under the water up, and through the water, she could see the sunshine and the guy's head. And then she had her near-death experience. And in her near-death experience, she went through a tunnel, and at the end of the tunnel, there was an elderly man, and this elderly man said, "It's not your time. You have to go back." That happens more often. People are told to go back because it's not their time. And in this case, the guy, and she said it couldn't have been anyone else than God. So and she said, God told me that there are 4 ingredients for life, and he told me what those are. And then she says, love, be loved, just be, and experience life. And she said that was so nice, because it is all about love, and it's all about just being here on earth and just experiencing what we do here, experiencing each other, experiencing life. It's like, as she said, it's like a playground in a schoolyard. So we have to make it nice for each other, to have a nice playtime.
The NDE blueprint.
Well, I have to stress again that not one NDE is the same as another. So there may be a lot of NDEs where you don't have a life review. So it's a subset of what people tell us. But there are so many people that tell us about their life review that it must be something that is important. But again, not everyone has that. And another thing is that people sometimes see deceased relatives, and that's important. Sometimes even they meet people. Let me just mention one example where a person had her NDE after, that's a woman, she had her NDE, and it's a cause of something with her lungs. And she had her NDE, and in her NDE, she met her deceased, some of the deceased relatives, and there was one that presented itself as a baby boy, as a baby, but a boy. And then the baby boy told her, "Look how I'm dressed. Look how I look, and tell your father that I'm here and that I'm okay, and I'm your brother." And then she says, "I don't have a brother." And then he said, "Just tell your father." And when she recovers, she meets her father again, and then tells what she heard there on the other side. And the father said, acknowledged it, because they had had a child before she was born. But it died very soon after it was born. And it was so painful that the parents didn't want to talk about it anymore. And when they had a new child, so the end the year, the woman, they didn't want to talk about the baby boy that was passed away so quickly. So that happens. There are people that see deceased relatives, and that's a great joy. And also pets. That's just for people who have pets and are in love with their pets. They are there. They seem to be there as well.
The near death journey.
People who have had an NDE really know that they are dead. There's a moment where sometimes they have these quotes like, "Okay, now I'm dead. I know that I'm dead," something like that. That they understand they are dead. Sometimes people, well, it's most of the time it starts with an out of body experience. So they leave their body, and they see their body lying there, and sometimes they don't recognize the body, because you must understand that we always see our body from, well, one perspective. When we look in the mirror, it's a flat image. Of course, you can use mirrors to look around, and you can make video, but it's always kind of 2D. But now when you leave your body, you suddenly see a body in 3D. Like, for instance, a woman who left her body and looked down from the ceiling, because most of the time it's funny, they hover first above, and they stop just beneath the ceiling and look down. And she looked down and saw this woman lying in bed, and she thought, "Wow, there's a woman with the same nightgown as I have." And then just a second later, she realizes that's her. So she doesn't really recognize her at first. The way in which people leave is different. Oftentimes we hear that people have some moments there still, they can roam around. Sometimes people are just in a nick of a second there on the other side. Sometimes they go through a tunnel, but oftentimes they don't go through a tunnel either. And this is maybe a good moment to just also mention that these stories are not fairy tales. They sound wonderful, of course, because there's love and people don't want to come back here again. But there is circumstantial evidence to show that these experiences are real. And part of that is the start of the experience. Because, as I said, they first can look around where they are. They see their body lying there. They can see what the doctors do. They can hear what the nurses say or what the doctors say, the tools they use. And there are hundreds of these kind of stories where people later can tell what they have seen, and that these what they've seen had been confirmed independently by others. So either the doctors or people present. And that is important because that shows you that our consciousness, that we always thought it would be part of the brain, or the brain produces the consciousness, that's the concept that we live in now, is not true. Because there are cases in which people have a consciousness while their body is flatlined. There's no breathing, there's no heartbeat, there's no activity in the brain. So, how is it possible that these people have a very, very clear understanding and observations of everything that's going on? That's mind boggling. So, and because we have, in a number of cases, independent people that verified the things that they say later on, what they have seen, that means that there is circumstantial evidence that these experiences are real. The case that I just gave you with the baby boy and the ear that didn't know that the baby boy was a brother of hers before, and that's another kind of case that was independently verified also later on, because it was established that she had a baby boy or baby brother that was older than she was, of course. And that shows you that there is circumstantial evidence that this otherworldly environment is there. So I call those veridical observations, so verifiable out of body experiences, category 1, where you see things on the earth still, like the doctors and the nurses. And that's independently verified. That shows you that our consciousness can be separate from our body. Category 2 is where there is meaningful conversation or meaningful communication on the other side. And the case that I just mentioned is one of those. And in my book, I have several of those from both categories to show you there is circumstantial evidence to show that our consciousness can be separate from our body, but other circumstantial evidence that shows you that this otherworldly environment does exist.
Reincarnation.
There are NDEers that talk about reincarnation. Sometimes they feel lives that they had before. But there are also a lot of NDEers that don't talk about it or that cannot relate to that. And there is some research that shows that the percentage of NDEers that believe in reincarnation is the same as in the general American, I have to say, public. So that doesn't seem to be conclusive. The whole concept of reincarnation and karma is something that I struggle with. And before I continue talking about that, I have to tell you that I don't know it all. So I don't pretend to be a connoisseur and knowledgeable about all these things. But I have my views on it. And the only thing that I can do is give you my view. And the view is that I've noticed that there are so many NDEers that talk about oneness. So we are all one. We come from the source. There's a source, and we come from it, call it God or whatever. We come from that source. And when we die, we go back to that source. So actually, we are part of the source. There is source in you, there's source in me. And in that sense, we are all divine, anyone. So that also applies to people you really dislike. We all have people that we really dislike. Also, they are part of the source. But if there is only one source and we go back and forth from it, why would a particular part of the source be coming back and forth? If you're in the source, then part of the source goes to a new child. And why would it be exactly the same part of that source? I don't know. I feel that the source leads every life there is on earth. And interestingly, in Hinduism, they say that the one God, so that's Brahman, is within every one of us, also in every living animal. So also humans, but also animals. I don't know why they stuck with only living animals, because I think the source is also in all the plants that we see and in the stones, in the concrete walls of our apartments. So the source is everywhere and leads every life. Why would there be a necessity for reincarnation? The source already leads all lives. That's how I see it. So, but I know there are stories of reincarnation that are really mind-boggling, where people remember past lives. And there's also an independent verification of that. So they go to that, investigate that past life, and they find that he or she has it right. I can't explain those. So that's why I say I don't know it all. But I think because we have the source within us, we know everything already. We know about unconditional love. We have all the knowledge within us. We are divine. So we could also tap into any life that had been on earth before. Maybe that's an explanation. But again, I don't know. I like the mystery still. And I think the only thing that we really know from NDEs, that's my belief, are actually 2 points. That's this unconditional love is always mentioned in NDEs, even in the little bit distressing NDEs. But another thing is that this concept of interconnection or even oneness is also in NDEs. But what we can conclude from that, I don't know.
The soul's container.
Well, the container part, yes. That's how NDEers see it. For instance, when they have to go down back to their body, they dislike it. Some of the quotes in my book are like, the body is too small to just go in there, or it feels like a diver suit that is just tiny bit too narrow. So how do I get in there? And they feel it's dirty. It's not something that a soul or a spirit wants to go in there. So the container, yes, we are captured, or our spirit is captured in this body. Yeah, this container. Yes. But then you talk about the learning part. Again, if I believe that we are all one and we come from the source, it means that we already know everything. So we don't have to learn anything. And that is being told to me by some NDEers as well. I had a discussion with some of them at a conference somewhere, and I said, well, aren't we here just to learn things? And then they said, no, you're just here because you have to be here to experience life. And that's what this example that I gave to you, this 8-year-old girl said, just be and experience life. You know everything already. You are divine. The thing we need to do is to express our divinity. And expressing our divinity in an environment that is so limited is very difficult. because we are in this body. So that's something you have to cope with. I mean, if you have the right color in a certain area, then you're good. If you don't have the right color in that area, then your life is more difficult. If you have talents, like you can sing very well or you're very good at mathematics, you can use that. So those are that's your body. But then also the way the body was brought up. Was it in a loving environment? Were they good role models? Did you have enough material to go around, like food and shelter and stuff like that? So every person is different. And so every life is different. And the way that people lead their life is different. So it is something, so nurture and nature are so important in who we are. And it is still that within that, we are divine. So the limitations are the nature nurture, but also the three dimensions we are in time. On the other side, it seems like there is everything. There's no limitations. It's so easy to be in a loving environment there. But here it's more difficult because of all the limitations.
Altered states of mind.
Well, first of all, you mentioned coma, but coma and hallucinations are totally different from near death experiences. Hallucinations are the story in hallucinations is not there. It's illogic. There's all kinds of stuff that happens. Near death experiences have a more logic. There's a storyline. There's people understand what happens. And coma, it's interesting. One of the more famous NDEers, that's even Alexander, was a neurosurgeon, and he was materialistic before he had his near-death experience. Or he materialistic in the sense that he thought that the brain was everything and created the consciousness. So, and if the brain is dead, you're not there anymore. He had his near-death experience, and that totally shook him and changed him because he realized, and he was in coma. He had been in coma for several days or weeks, I don't know. But he realized that the situation of a coma and hallucinations are totally different from an NDE. Because an NDE is you're in this environment where it feels super real, more real than we are here. So that's it. And you also asked about the psychedelics. I know of people who have had psychedelics like ketamine or ayahuasca. If people want to do that, do it in a controlled environment. I wouldn't do it. But if you want to do it in a controlled environment where you know you're safe. I've heard of people who had NDE-like experience during such a trip. Some of the stories that I heard are also that I wonder if it's really an NDE. I know of one person who had a ketamine-induced state in which she had something that would really qualify on the Grayson scale as an NDE, and I believe she had an NDE. There are also stories where people seem to have light, feelings of light or seeing light. Well, all these kind of things that you can have with ayahuasca. But I'm not sure whether that's really an NDE, because an NDE is a very coherent experience, sometimes with different scenes. What I understand, sometimes people are taken from one scene to the other, but they really feel that it's real. And as I said before, there are cases where there was meaningful communication that was confirmed independently. So it seems that this environment, even though the scenes change, is real, seems to be real. And so, and I also know that there is research where they stimulate parts of the brain, and you can then create a situation where you feel that you're going through a tunnel or where you see light flashes. But those are partial segments of an NDE, but it's not all together. It's not a complete experience, especially when you have life review is such a very special part of an NDE. And again, not every NDE has a life review. I want to stress that. But life reviews, I have never heard that someone had a life review with the possibility of feeling what all the others in their lives felt, what you did to them.
Science meets spirituality. I guess one thing that I'm kind of very curious about, through your work there, because you come from, Dutch central bank, very kind of scientific, math-based type of a feel to this, which is considered more spiritual based. So just wondering, like, how do you balance yourself from just being super open with hearing all these amazing stories and unbelievable for some people, perhaps, but at the same time, like kind of checking yourself, making sure you're using a scientific approach for any discoveries, just really challenging yourself, challenging those findings. And how has this kind of evolved for you over time?
Well, that's a very good question because for me, I felt sometimes as if I was in a split, with one leg in the spiritual side and with the other leg in the very down to earth financial side. And, my colleagues, some of them knew what I was doing, and they thought, "Why? He's a little bit weird, but he's okay. He's nice, and he does his work well." So I think it's possible because I've met more people that were in finance or doing other kinds of down to earth jobs and that were spiritual. It is not excluding, it is possible. And for me, as a scientist, as I studied economics and I was in finance and doing stuff there, for me, it was very important to have a scientific approach to this. So there is good scientific work going on in this area. I could talk about that a little bit, but the most important thing for me was those veridical observations. So those verifiable out of body observations. And there are so many stories about that. And IANDS, who published my book, so the International Association for Near-Death Studies, also publishes another book, and maybe I should show you that. And that's this book, "The Self Does Not Die." The self does not die. It has hundreds of cases that have been researched and in which there was a verifiable part of the NDE. You have to imagine that NDEs, it's difficult to research them because you cannot repeat them. They are one-off. It's immoral to ask someone who just had an NDE, "Can we kill you again and then see what happens? And we'll get you back again quickly enough." You cannot do that. So you have to build a database with cases and research those cases very clearly and very in a scrutinized way. And that's what these people did who wrote the book. And that's important because I feel that these wonderful stories require a very solid base. And that's what this research gives you.
Bob's takeaways.
Well, when I started being interested in this topic, that was when I read Moody's book. Raymond Moody is the doctor who wrote for the first time about NDEs, well, about these experiences that he saw and he came into contact with. And he called them near-death experiences because these experiences occurred, in his case, only when people were close to death, near death. But now we know that's not only the case. So you can have it under different circumstances. And I became interested in doing, well, looking at that. That got out of hand. And I think that for people who are on that path right now, it would be helpful if they just see what kind of research there is done, but better to read books or to look at documentaries where this topic is tackled. And the thing that I wanted to have at that moment in time when I just started, like 50 years ago, being interested in this topic, I would have loved to have a book where there were quotes of people who had such an experience, just to be acquainted with what happens. And then other source that people can go to is the website of our organization. That's IANDS.org. Of course, people can also, as you can see, there is my website is here. And there is also sources mentioned there, and they can also always ask questions to me, and I'll give answers and put them on their way. But ians.org is a very nice place to go to. There is also an archive on that website with thousands of cases. Some are very interesting and some are just interesting, but I find every NDE very interesting to know. That's why I read and spoke and heard so many of these cases, and that really enhanced my life. The point is that I would like to say that also, that if you would become more acquainted with what the contents is of near-death experiences, it will also potentially be beneficial to your life, because you will certainly lose your fear of death, but you also will understand that living your life is important. No one is unimportant. We all have a task to do, and it's so important that we are alive, everyone, even if you are in the deepest problems, there is a reason for it. And again, I just want to stress again what this little girl of 8 said. Love, be loved. It has to do with love. That's important. But also just be and experience life. It seems like that is important, just to experience what you're doing and bring love into the world. Also, the small things are important. So just smiling at someone in the street is important. Saying something nice to someone is important, because it all has ripple effects. That is what I learned from NDEers, and that's what I try to do as well.
The meaning of human existence.
Oh, deep question. You know, some NDEers get to hear what the purpose of life is, and some NDEers bluntly ask about it. And the answers they get is a variety. It's mainly love, love everyone, let people love you as well. Just be. It's also, it seems to be like this is a play we're doing here. And that sounds horrible for people that have really big problems to come around and do their life. If you are on the other side, which is more real than this side, you will look back and think, well, that was all just in a very short time, and it is very insignificant. But the fact that we have been on Earth, that we have had this gift of living, that I understand from NDEs is very important. It's a gift you get to just experience life, experience the wind in your hair, smell roses, especially be together with others, educate children, educate others in a nice way. The thing that NDEers change, the way NDEers change, is that they become less materialistic, in this sense, not very much interested in money and power, but they become more interested in relations with others. They cherish the relations with people around them, but also with nature, with animals, with plants. That's what changed. Those changes are really significant. So if we just look at that, then it may be a good thing for us to look at our neighbors, look at our family, and give them love.
Bob's mission.
I have many missions. I think at the moment I'm still in finance a little bit, so that's a mission. It's not unimportant. I work with children that are backward in school, so I help them with math and with language. That's really nice. And I have my friends and family that I really cherish. So that is an important mission. Another thing is also that I'm a board member of IANDS, and I really like that very much because it gives me the possibility to work with people that are like-minded, in this case, interested in near-death experiences, but also organizing conferences in the US. And we had a symposium in the European Africa time zone recently on the 1st of November, some months ago. And that was really nice to do because and the ears are everywhere. They are in South Africa and Australia and US. They come from all walks of life. So my mission is to do all the other things that I mentioned, but also this. This is a very important mission that I feel for myself. But I sometimes I think if I go and when I go to heaven, it will be that they will be more interested in how I did my how I loved others, how I let others love me.
That's an amazing way to leave us off with, Bob. So, we talked a little bit about it before there, but perhaps we can summarize for our listeners at the end here. If people wanted to know more about you, learn about more of your work, where are the best places they can find you?
Well, my website is still here, bobcopus.com. IANDS is a very good website to go to, so IANDS.org. There's another archive with a lot of NDE stories in it, very interesting. That's the NDERF.org, which is the Near Death Experience Research Fund.org. And there are groups of IANDS everywhere in the United States and also in other countries in the world. So maybe look if there's a group there, but you can find them on the IANDS website and read about them and listen to stories you can find on internet. It's really interesting. It will change your life for the better. And that's something that I really hope. I hope that eventually more people will be interested in this topic and will change their life in becoming more interested in other people and in nature.
Thanks so much for sharing, Bob. We'll be sure to add those details to our show notes. So that concludes episode 2. If you found this content intriguing, please share your thoughts in the comment section below. To support our channel, we would greatly appreciate if you can consider subscribing, liking our video, or sharing this video with a friend. We'll end today with a few words inspired by neurosurgeon and NDE experiencer Eben Alexander. The greatest lesson is that we are all connected. And the greatest power is the power of love. Until next time, be well and be free. This is the Spiritual Code Podcast.